Welcome back. We are now going to start on a new topic called exploratory data analysis, which is commonly abbreviated EDA. And this is a rather broad topic, so I'm going to break this up over the course of the next two modules. And I'm going to start by giving you an outline of how we're going to break down the material. So the first thing we want to do is kind of get some perspective and context as to where EDA fits into what we've been doing so far. And we've said that one of the most important things to know about statistics is that it's a process. In Module 1, we talked about the first couple of steps we take in this process. The first thing we always do is we start with a question. And then we have to plan how we're going to collect the data. And this overall process is called experimental design. And we saw that there was a lot that went into this process. And I'm just going to briefly recap what we do in experimental design and illustrate how it's actually used in the context of the George Floyd discussion problem. So the first thing we have to do after we've decided what question we're interested in answering is who is everyone we need to get data from to answer our question. That's called our population. So one possible population in the George Floyd problem would be all police reports that were filed. Now we have to ask ourselves, what data do we want to collect from the population? What is it that we want to know about these things in the population? And these are called variables. So in the case of the George Floyd problem, there are a lot of different variables that we could collect. So some examples are the outcome of a police encounter, the race of the people involved, the location, the time, and there are many, many others. We then want to get an idea as to what we're going to do with this data. And how we do our analysis is going to depend a little bit on how many variables we have. This is one way of kind of roughly thinking about how we'll proceed. If we have a single variable, generally what we're looking for is some sort of change in the population parameter of that one variable. As an example, if our variable was whether or not a police encounter ended in death, the parameter would be the percentage of deaths, say in a particular year. And we might want to see if that parameter, percentage of deaths, had increased from some known value in 2000 to 2019. If we're looking at two or more variables, we're generally trying to see if there's a relationship between them. So as an example, if we had, say in the George Floyd case, the two categorical variables, the outcome of a police encounter and the race of the people involved, we might want to see if one particular value for the outcome, say like death, tended to go with a certain value of the race, say whether the suspect was black, more or less. If we're looking at two quantitative variables, we're going to be looking at correlations. Now, we have to be a little careful. We learned also that just because two things are related doesn't mean there's necessarily a causal relationship, or if there is, it's not necessarily because of those two variables. Then we moved on and talked about data collection. And the key thing to realize is that we don't really care about the sample per se. The sample is a means to an end. We want to know the population parameter, and since we can't get everyone from the population because they're generally very large, we use the estimate from the sample. So the sample statistics estimate the population parameters. In order for our estimate to be good, the sample has to look like the population. And we saw the way that we ensure that when we perform sampling is we try to make our sample so that we're randomly choosing the individuals from the population and our sample is large enough. And these are the main principles behind data collection. So now we've collected our data, what do we do with it? And this is where we are at right now. This is a process known as exploratory data analysis. And this is how we're going to get information out of data. And so we're going to go into the basic steps that we use in any type of exploratory data analysis next.